You mentioned you're working on contracts. How many more years on ours, do you know? Offhand?
5 or 6.
7? Maybe 7.
6 or 7.
I don't know.
Yeah, 6 or 7.
7.
3.
So we may see you back at
Maybe
that.
7.
Oh, yeah.
6 or 7.
God willing, yeah.
Yeah, 6 or 7.
You're ready for retirement by this.
Mr. Rowell.
Yes, I'd like to be here when they renegotiate, but I think it's a terrible deal. I think it was a disgrace that we did it the way we did it. It's too long for one thing, and I'm not happy with the rates. I'm not happy with the choices. And one of the things I think that's terrible is the programming on the numbers. When you look in the TV guide, it says 38, and you look in your other little mail-out guide, it says 27. You look at the back of your clicker, it says 42. And you have to go through 7 different things to find out what channel 38 is. Is it channel 14 or channel 9? And then they change it. I think it's terrible. I mean, I think the whole system is a disgrace, especially when you go back and think cable television. I remember cable television, no commercials. It was the ultimate. That's when cable television first came out. Now there's more commercials on cable television than there is on regular television. So I'm not happy with the system at all. And I'm not happy with the contract. And I think what we should do is what some of these other companies do. We'll give you a contract to use the wires and the cable in the town. And anytime there's an increase in your rates, we increase our rates for the charge of the cables and having them in the town. It's the only way to offset it. Because it seems to me like you people come in, we got to increase. What can we do about it? Nothing. We went through this the last time you were here.
You want to give us a percentage of your increase?
They'd be more than willing to have you involved next time we negotiate.
Well, I'm not sure I'll be here then.
Yeah. Mr. Vito.
Opposite Mr. Rowe, I couldn't be happier. I think you're doing a fine job. I do remember commercials being on cable TV. And I think people have to remember one thing, and of course I hate to see rates go up too. But cable TV is not like electricity. You don't need it to live. If they're unhappy, drop the service.
Well, again, I appreciate those comments.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to as far as rates are concerned, I'll go back to one of my original statements. When you break it down to about $1.10 a day, in my opinion, there's certainly more value than $1.10 that we derive from cable television on a daily basis. I know that you can't get a newspaper and a cup of coffee for $1.10, and I think my cable television, and I'm a subscriber, but I'm looking at the news, or I'm looking at the Weather Channel, or I'm looking at traffic, or I'm looking at a sporting event that isn't on broadcast television, and that's where I perceive the value of cable television. To be honest with you, I'm not as recent a subscriber as Mr. O'Leary is, but for a while I was like the shoemaker who wasn't taking care of his own family. I didn't have cable television. I'm going back 20 years ago when I first started in the business, and it became a necessity for me when I saw what was on basic cable service that I couldn't get on broadcast, and that's where I'm coming from. If you wanted to, as Mr. Smith has in the past, if you wanted to argue with me about the value of some of the premium services and the programming that's on some of those premium services, I don't think I'd take too strong a stand against you at times. But the $35 a day, a month rather, and the programming that's available that isn't available on broadcast television is, in my opinion, a good value. And again, no one likes to, see a rate increase. And again, going back to what Mr. Smith said, I think I broke my own personal record for putting gas in my tank the other day. And I was astounded by it. But unfortunately, that's the world we live in today, and I'm not sure how to stop.
How is the service in relation to the Roadrunner service now? The subscriptions are up, and I remember when we first talked about putting in these little stations around town.
The nodes.
The nodes.
Yep.
how's the subscription rate and as far as number of usage here? Because as that increases,
Right.
the speed slows down, we were told.
It's conceivable that it could slow down, and right now we haven't experienced that. So, that business is growing for us, and we're pleased with that. And in response, we had this discussion, during the negotiations even. What the chairman is referring to is, we have various nodes throughout the town that neighborhoods are connected to. In other words, we run what we call a hybrid fiber coax network, where we run fiber to a node that serves X number of homes, and then from that node we run coax. Now, our video service and our high-speed data run off of that. We had concerns initially that perhaps when the number of high-speed data customers grew, that the service would slow down. To this point, we haven't reached that. Maybe that's a bad sign, but we haven't taxed the system yet, and we've had very, very few, if any, complaints about the speed from our users. Anybody that, I shouldn't say everybody, but most people who use the high-speed data service are very, very satisfied with the speed.
Someone called me the other night too, and unfortunately I didn't have enough time to discuss it with the person who was calling, but they wanted to come into my home. I don't know, was to evaluate the system in relation to the digital.
Yes, that was
what was that all about? I just didn't have time to deal with it. I said, no, fine.
Well, and this is a good opportunity, for anyone that's watching too. As I indicated to you, we have launched what we refer to as digital television service, and right now we're doing a door-to-door marketing effort that people are calling, making appointments. It's a twofold effort. They're making sure the digital converter requires a much cleaner signal than the standard converter. So what they're doing is they're making an appointment to make sure that the line, the drop coming into your house is capable of receiving that signal. If it isn't, they'll fix it, or arrange to get it fixed, and at the same time show you the service, and if you want that service installed while they're there, you can get it done. So
for an additional
well, actually, the charge, and again, this gets complicated with the packaging, but in some instances, you can maintain the same level of service and get a digital converter with a different guide, more channels, and not pay additional money, or some, in some cases, $3 or $4 more. It's a different product. And it does, in many cases, cost additional money, but it's a valuable product. It's a good product. So, but that's what they're referring to.
You have questions?
Yeah. Dave Osgood. I had a new digital box put in my house. The day that it was put in, the installer was supposed to rewire the inside of my house with digital cable. He didn't come prepared to do that. So my house, I know I'm supposed to call them back to schedule an appointment to have it done. I haven't done that. I don't know if that's going to damage the box or not. Nobody's ever come back and told me, gee, you got to get that wiring quick. So my first problem with that whole scenario was that I arranged to be there, or have somebody be there on that day, expecting that the whole thing was going to be done, that the lines were going to get put in and the box was going to get put in, and I'd be all set to go. That didn't happen. So I have to make another appointment to have somebody come back out. The installer should have known. He should have had the wire on his truck. He was there for a specific thing, and it didn't happen. I'm pleased with the service. One thing I do have concern about is the fact that there's no competition. You mentioned competition earlier in your conversation, but there's no other cable company that I can call up and say, hey, I want to get some cable from you, or another cable company that can offer me something better than what you might have. So you don't really have competition per se. You have competition 7 years down the road, but you don't have it right now. And another problem that I have, concern that I have, is that my phone and my cable are bundled, basically, with the same company, and that just is a concern to me. I end up giving a bunch of money to one company. The only thing that I don't have with you guys is my long distance. I do that from my ISP carrier. So those are my concerns that I had. The other thing with the digital TV is that, yes, there are more channels, but when you click through all those channels, there are multiple channels of the same thing. There's not necessarily an increased choice of shows to watch. As an example of pay-per-view movie channels, there's maybe 5 different movies, and they're spread out across 10 different pay-per-view channels. There's 3 times as many like HBOs and Cinemaxes and Showtimes, but you might start at number 60 and end up at number 204, but they're all the same show at the same time. They're not different shows at different times on different channels. So when you start to go through that long list of channels that you have, you're seeing a lot of repeat choices. So it doesn't appear as though you're utilizing the expanded space that you have given me to my advantage. There should be 5 different movies on 5 different HBO channels, but there's not. There's just 1 or 2 different movies on 5 different HBO channels.
You've raised a number of issues, and I mean, if you get time, I can respond to a lot of them.
This is going to be your last meeting with us.
First of all, I agree with what you said, the installer should have been prepared. Secondly, if the signal's not 100%, it won't damage the converter. It might, your picture might degrade slightly, it might not.
My sound.
Yeah, okay, so it's not going to hurt the converter. The competition does exist. I mean, there is not another cable television company in North Reading. You get DirecTV, you get satellite TV. Interestingly enough, preparing for coming in here, I anticipated that there might be a question on competition. And competition not only affects us where we have actual cable competition, RCN being an example, but it also helps keep our rates down in other communities because we do treat everyone pretty much the same in terms of the cost of doing business. Interestingly enough, the rate in North Reading for essentially the same service is less than it is in Arlington and Waltham, which are 2 communities that RCN is a viable competitor. So I think one of the reasons, and we've had this is a little bit of my history showing, one of the reasons that we've had RCN more or less refuse to come into North Reading, or I shouldn't say refuse, elect not to come in, is because we have a pretty good product at a pretty good price here, and they're not sure that they can make a dent. I believe that they came in and made a presentation almost 2 years ago now, and they elected not to come in. You make a good point about the bundling of telephone services and video services. Those are 2 separate and distinct businesses. We are very regulated by the telephone tariffs and rules and regulations of the federal government, so we have a very systematic way of reporting. Right now, the internet service that we provide is considered to be a cable television service, so that's part of the cable product. But that's an excellent point. On pay-per-view channels showing the same movie at different times, that's by design.
It's at the same time. That was one of the issues that I have, is like if you started at channel 60 and I don't know what channel it is, HBO or whatever.
I'm not talking about 60 now.
You'd end up with HBO there, and then at number 204, it's the same HBO channel with the same channel.
There's a duplication of HBOs on both the analog and the digital lineup. If there were not, the people that didn't subscribe to the digital would not be able to receive HBO. So there's 5 or 6 HBOs, each of which are duplicated.
Right.
Because if they were not, then we would not, we'd be legislating against the analog subscribers and, forcing people into the digital.
The analog would be able to get the lower end.
The analog's back on 60.
Right.
Right.
I have the digital box, digital box.
You get them on both.
I would get them on both, but I should be getting both the analog and a different one.
You can't do that, because if you did that, then we'd be